Again, I'd like to do it by way of contextualizing what Steiner said, rather than begin straight with what Steiner said. We'll come back to that in due course, because again, if I think to appreciate what Rudolf Steiner is offering in terms of economics and economic history, you need to know the story of both those disciplines, or both those fields of activity. Otherwise, if you don't know them, everything Steiner says may seem like unique and never been thought of before. And for that reason, it may be the case, but until you know the kind of context or the situation in those disciplines, you can't really see what, if anything, is new that he's bringing to the table. And therefore, you might think everything he says is new and has never been understood or thought of before. And I think this does him and everybody else a great disservice. So I want to start with, as everybody knows and can test for themselves in their own daily experience, the way we use money, it basically, there are three ways we use it. We use it to buy stuff, we use it to lend to people, and we use it to give away. And I don't think there is a fourth, and I don't think you can reduce those three to two. I know in economics, there's another kind of use, which is sort of delayed saving before you spend kind of, but I think that's a fake use. I mean, either you're spending or you're lending, and if you put your money in a savings account to spend it later, then you've basically lent it to a bank. And so it's there aren't more than three, and you can't reduce them to two. I think just the man in the street or the person in the street would get this, and it's a good place to start in one's daily experience. And because that's not contestable, that's the kind of test bed, the common sense experience people have. And now these three uses, we know from our own experience, well, normally, that most people are most closely associated with the currency of their country. And what they don't, because they're kind of used to this, they don't necessarily conceive their currency of their country consciously, they just take it for granted. But if you want, for example, if you were in the United States and you wanted to buy something, you want to buy some apples, you would use dollars, obviously. And let's keep it simple, dollar bills. They're all green in the United States. They're also all the same size, which is the kind of strange thing about the United States. If you go to Switzerland, the different denominations are different colors, and the banknotes get longer the larger the denomination. I think this is maybe for, whether it's for machine readable or whether it's for blind readable. I don't know why they do it, but it's an interesting little detail that they change the color and the dimension of their banknotes on a basis of whether it's 10 or Swiss or 20 or 30 or 40. And I'm saying that because in America is very backward in a lot of ways. It only has one size banknote, and they're all green. None of them are greenbacks, but they're all green, and nothing changes except the number and maybe the picture of a present on the back or something. But I'm starting there because you have an undifferentiated currency in the form of the dollar bill. And if you want to buy apples or you want to lend your friend some money, you're still going to use this one currency, the dollars. And so from the one currency, especially in the case of the United States, you can't tell from the lack of differentiation in the dollar bills what's going on here. But if you start to characterize the difference between spending, lending, and giving, the first thing is clear. If you buy something, you've said goodbye to the money, you never see this money again. You've got an apple or whatever it is you buy, but you buy something, and in the course of time, that thing will disappear. It would depreciate or wear out or something. Either you'll eat the apple and then you've got neither the money nor the thing you bought, or even your car will wear out and so on. So the nature of if you were to characterize what happens when you use money to buy things, it is this: you've lost the money forever, and now the thing you got also disappears. So you end up with neither money nor the thing.
Yeah.
If you can't see this through the color of the dollar bill. If you then use the same dollar bill or dollar bills to lend someone $1,000, for example, you get nothing. You haven't bought anything. You've got nothing. Right? The money hasn't gone. It's now due back to you. So it's still, you still got the money, albeit it's, you hope it comes back to you. And so you can see in there that now you've used this dollar bill to finance somebody else's whatever they needed the money for. This is by no means the same as buying an apple or buying a car. So if you characterize these uses, you go into more detail, the $1 bill is disguising two very different uses of this dollar bill. And I wrote a book once in which this wasn't going, it's called Rare Albion. It's about this mythical country. And in that mythical country, the dollar bills, so to speak, it has its own currency, but the dollar bills you use for buying things are a different color to the dollar bills you use for lending. So you can really identify right into the currency. Or you can use, if you do it in modern terms, you can use a debit card. You can discipline yourself. I only use my debit card to buy things. And I only use my credit card to invest in myself or invest in someone else, never to buy things. You could discipline yourself through the use of credit cards, never to buy anything. That will force you to use your debit card, but that requires you to have revenue before you buy something. A credit card, you buy it and you borrow the money to pay for it. So if you, even in the modern technology, if you just say, okay, I'm only going to use my credit card to invest in myself, maybe, I don't know, pay a course, take some professional development course and put that on your credit card, you're starting to discipline yourself with the current technology. You're differentiating these two kinds of money from the very undifferentiated dollar bill. And so you can see those two main uses. And then you have a third use, which is giving money. Well, in the first case, you've given the money away, but in favor if you've got something for it. That then disappears. The second case, you haven't given the money away, you've lent it to someone and you're expecting it back. We can discuss whether that's going to happen or not, but in principle, the money's owed back to you. You can charge interest on it, or we do. We give all sorts of justifications why we charge interest. It's opportunity costs and I don't know what, and if you have it, I can't use it, and we make up all sorts of stories. But fundamentally, the purpose of the interest is so that the principal retains the purchasing power it had when I first lent it to you. Because the main problem I have if I lend money to you or to a bank or anybody is the purchasing power I have now is now going to be diminishing over time. And so I need to, if I add, I'm talking about lending, not investing. If I lend you a certain sum of money, for it to have the same purchasing power, it has to come back bigger. And the only way I'm going to achieve that is if I ask, say, on top of the principal, you're going to pay me something in addition.
Yeah.
So when I get it back, it's still got the same purchasing power.
Yeah.
I think it's really fundamental to understand this because you make all sorts of arguments why interest happens or has happened or where it came from. But in the modern self-conscious world, that is what it's doing. And it's so I'm just my excess purchasing power, which I don't currently need, I put it somewhere else with you. But when it comes back, that's a week later or a year later, I need to make sure it's that I've have the same purchasing power. So these are things are clear. And now the third thing, when you give money to somebody, you certainly from a taxation point of view, that has left your estate. This has now gone into another accounting entity. This is not your money anymore. You've got nothing for it. You haven't lent it. You've just said goodbye to it, and you have no counterpart. You can say how wonderful I was to have given someone some money. You can say all sorts of things about it if you want. But strictly speaking, you got nothing for it, and nor is it owed back to you. It's gone. Not only gone from your world, it now belongs to somebody else. And and then when that person receives the money, they're stuck. They return the same problem. So what are they going to do with it? They can spend it, they can lend it, or if they have it in excess, they can give it on to someone else. There aren't more than three things to do. And you always have this problem. There are two, what I would call kind of real uses. And there's this third bit. But the third bit's really important. I transfer this money to someone else. That's by definition what I do with the third use of money. So if that's clear, and I think it is fairly clear, we then run into a problem in economics where it's very well known and a joke made of it. The one thing economists do not agree on is money. You can scratch any economist, they won't agree what money is. That's the popular image. Has a certain truth in it. But if you go a bit deeper, it's not really the case, because economists talk in terms of money having three functions. So I don't understand, if they don't know what money is, how do they know it has three functions? So it's kind of not true that they don't know what money is. What's true is they don't quite know what to make of the three functions of it. And so when you come into monetary discussions, it's more about which function is more important, the means of exchange function, or the so-called store of value function, or the unit of account function. These are the three main functions. And people argue over which of those is the most important. It's not that they don't understand money. They don't understand how the functions of money are related to one another. And there, I don't understand why they can't just take their cues from the three uses of money. I do understand why they don't, but I say I don't when I start out the conversation, because it's pretty obvious that what economists mean by means of exchange is the money used to buy and sell things. So it's involved in spending.
Yeah.
Pretty much a no-brainer. And when people get into debates about which function of money is the most important, most people end up with the means of exchange function, because it's the most obvious function, not because it's necessarily the most important. It's the most obvious. It requires no acrobatics of the mind to understand this. So I get that means of exchange is a kind of close match of money function to what the person in the street would call, you mean the money I used to buy and sell stuff. Okay, I get it. Then you come to the money we use to lend and borrow, because there's always two sides of it. It's never just lending. You have to have a borrower in order to lend. And so this kind of money is what's called as store of value, as it's the function of a store of value. So there's a kind of problem in the notion that you can store value. In my opinion, there's a problem in it. But I get it's the kind of idea you put the money in the bank, and when you go and get it back, it's no different to when you put it in there, for the reasons I gave earlier. The bank pays you interest. So you're only parking it until you spend it. Basically, that's the nature of what you're doing. For whatever reason you lent, from your point of view, it's money that's you just parked over here until you need it, and then it's come back to you. And you're not really, in that sense, interested or involved in what the person who borrowed it is doing with it. This is really important. It will come back into your world. And therefore, I don't understand why the store of value function isn't simply a way of saying the money we use to lend and borrow. And then you come to the third one, and this is where I do understand people have a problem. So means of exchange is easily linked to spending and buying and selling. Store of value is easily linked, at least in my mind, to lending and borrowing. Whether that's you lending to a friend or lending to a bank, it doesn't make any difference. The bank is really borrowing your money, so don't get too deferential to the banking system, technically speaking. And then you come to unit of account. But now we have a problem, because according to my analogies here, that must be connected to giving. But what? Because the unit of account is just a dollar. So I use the dollar to buy things. I use the dollar to lend money. How can this, what is he talking about when the dollar I use to give someone else, I'm now connecting it to unit of account in some way. And I'm sort of doing it analogously, because I'm just trying to say the logic of the analogy will drive you to the only conclusion possible. In some way, unit of account must be linked to the giving use of money. And because of this, because it's not clear what I'm talking about or what this is about, people shy away from the whole discussion because they kind of know it's going to lead them to somewhere which they're not ready to kind of cope with.